Oliver thought he understood the risks of driving late-night Uber shifts, drunk passengers, shady neighborhoods, the occasional angry fare, but nothing prepared him for the night a rider named D stepped into his life without ever opening the door. My name is Oliver. I drive Uber part-time, mostly late nights. The money's decent, and I like the quiet. There's something strangely peaceful about the city when the bars are closing and the sidewalks are empty. The chaos of the day fades out, replaced by long stretches of silence and distant city sounds, the low hum of traffic, an occasional siren, maybe the rustle of wind through alleys no one walks through anymore. It was during one of those late-night shifts that everything started to change. It was a Thursday, just after 1 a.m. I'd been parked downtown for about 20 minutes with no pings. I usually stayed near areas where people needed rides, 24-hour diners, clubs, industrial zones with overnight workers. That night I was closer to the edge of the city, near some old factories and warehouses that had been abandoned for years. The buildings were mostly fenced off and covered in graffiti, their windows broken and boarded up. But sometimes I'd get pickups from workers or students renting the cheap units in nearby buildings. My phone buzzed. A new ride request popped up. Pickup location: 8th and Holloway. It didn't raise any red flags at first, until I looked at the map. The pin was placed directly in front of one of the oldest, most run-down warehouses on the block. It wasn't near any apartments or even accessible streets, just a crumbling fenced-in structure with a collapsed roof and weeds growing out of the sidewalk. The fare was higher than usual. Someone had selected the priority option, which meant they were willing to pay extra to be picked up quickly. I stared at the screen. I should have declined it. No one sane would be waiting for a ride there, especially at this hour. But I don't know. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe I was just tired and thinking about the extra money I accepted. As I drove closer, the streets started to change. The glow of the city faded, and the buildings became darker, more lifeless. The streetlights grew fewer and farther apart. Some were flickering, others completely dead. The pavement was cracked and uneven, and the shadows felt heavier, like they weren't just cast by the absence of light, but by something else, something watching. When I turned onto Holloway, I slowed the car to a crawl. The warehouse came into view, and just like I remembered, it was massive, rusted, and hollow. Its front entrance was wide open, just a gaping black mouth surrounded by rotting wood and peeling metal. The app showed that the rider was already at the pickup spot, but I didn't see anyone. I pulled to the curb and idled, engine humming softly. The street was silent, even the breeze had died down. I waited 5 seconds, 10. Then I saw movement. From behind one of the thick concrete pillars near the entrance, a figure stepped out. It was tall, wearing a dark hoodie that covered most of its face. Its arms hung slightly too low, and the way it moved, it wasn't quite right. Slow, stiff, like it was unfamiliar with walking, like it was trying to mimic human motion but hadn't fully figured it out. I felt a chill go down my back. My instincts were screaming at me to drive away, but I couldn't move. I just watched. The figure didn't come straight toward the car. It took a few steps forward, then stopped in the middle of the street, right in front of my headlights. It tilted its head slightly, almost as if it were studying me. I reached out slowly and unlocked the passenger door. I wasn't sure why I did it. Maybe I felt frozen by some kind of strange obligation. But the figure didn't move. It just stood there, head tilted, limbs loose, the hood hiding its face. Then my phone chimed, a soft, familiar ding from the Uber app. I looked down, rider canceled. When I looked up, the figure was already turning around. It walked slowly back toward the warehouse entrance and disappeared into the dark. I sat there for another 30 seconds, heart pounding. Then I hit the gas and got the hell out of there. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept seeing that tilted head, that blank stillness. I told myself it was just some weirdo messing around, maybe a prank or someone strung out. But something about it felt wrong on a deeper level, like I hadn't just seen a person but something pretending to be one. I should have reported it. I should have done something, but I didn't. I convinced myself to forget it. That was my mistake. The next night I told myself it had all been a fluke. Just someone trying to scare me, maybe even some stupid viral prank. I'd heard about people staging creepy encounters to film drivers' reactions, something for views and laughs online. That made more sense than what my imagination was cooking up. Still, the unease hadn't worn off. The image of that figure stuck in my head like a splinter. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw it standing in my headlights, unmoving, head tilted at that unnatural angle. I decided to stay away from that part of town. No more rides near Holloway. I parked closer to the city center, near a strip of clubs and coffee shops that kept the area buzzing past midnight. I figured if I stayed where the lights were bright and people were around, I'd be fine. The first couple of hours were normal. Picked up a couple heading home from a show, then a guy who'd missed the last train. Smooth, quick trips, no issues. But even in the city lights, I caught myself checking the rearview mirror more than usual. I kept glancing at the app, half expecting another request from 8th and Holloway, even though I'd marked it as an unsafe location. It was a little after 3 a.m. when I got what I decided would be my last ride of the night. The ping came from a spot on Foster Avenue, not far from a quiet residential park. Nice area. Familiar, I'd been there plenty of times before. I accepted it without hesitation. As I got closer, something gnawed at the back of my mind. The name of the rider. It was just one letter. D. No photo, no details. Just that single letter. It reminded me too much of the previous night's ride. I pushed the thought down. Coincidence, I told myself. Maybe the app was glitching. The park was mostly empty. A few scattered benches and streetlights, dim and yellowed with age. I pulled up to the curb and turned on my hazards. The app showed the rider was already waiting. I looked around. That's when I saw them. Sitting alone on a bench near a broken light was a figure. Their posture was too straight. Their hands rested flat on their knees like they'd been posed there. The hoodie was the same shade, the same shape. I felt a cold sweat start to creep down my back. I kept my doors locked, watched through the windshield. The figure stood. They began walking toward the car, slow and deliberate. Each step was measured, almost mechanical. No sway, no bounce, just forward motion, like a puppet being pulled forward on invisible strings. I wanted to drive away, but something in me froze. I just sat there, unable to look away. They stopped at the passenger door. Just stood there, inches from the window. I couldn't see their face again. The shadows beneath the hood swallowed every feature, but I could feel them looking at me. Not through the glass, but through me. Then my phone buzzed. I flinched and looked down. D has cancelled this trip. No sound, just the wind picking up slightly through the trees. When I looked back up, the figure was gone. Not walking away, not running, just not there anymore. The bench was empty. The sidewalk was clear. I turned off the app and drove home with my heart pounding. I didn't take another ride for the rest of the night. Back in my apartment, I locked every door and double-checked the windows. I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'd hallucinated the whole thing from lack of sleep. Maybe it had just been someone dressed similarly. But deep down, I didn't believe that. I didn't believe it because of what I noticed when I plugged my phone in to charge. The Uber app was still running in the background. And when I opened it out of habit, I saw something that made my blood run cold. My driver profile was gone. My name, my rating, my completed trips, everything was wiped. In its place was a blank profile. No photo, no name, just a single letter where mine had been. D. I didn't drive at all for the next 2 nights. I told myself I needed rest, that maybe I was just pushing myself too hard. Maybe it was all some prolonged stress hallucination, some weird combination of fatigue, darkness, and isolation. But those excuses didn't hold up. Not after what I'd seen. Not after seeing my profile completely replaced by something else. I reached out to Uber support, trying to act casual. I asked why my profile had been wiped, and whether there had been a technical issue. They responded within a day saying there had been no changes to my account on their end. According to them, everything was normal. My trip history, photo, account details, all still there. But when I logged in, the app still showed a blank screen. No trips, no history, no name. Just that single letter D. It felt like something had taken my place. On the 3rd day, I forced myself to do something normal. I signed up for a food delivery app. No passengers, no strange late-night figures, just pick up and drop off. I thought it would help. Something about doing an ordinary job, in daylight, made me feel grounded again. The first few deliveries went smoothly. Lunch hours, busy neighborhoods, decent tips. The air felt lighter. For a while I believed maybe I'd imagined everything, but that changed on a Wednesday afternoon. I had just finished dropping off a sandwich ordered downtown and was parked outside a convenience store, scrolling through my phone while waiting for the next ping. The streets were alive with cars and people. Normal. Safe. Then my screen flickered just for a second. I wasn't using the Uber app. I had deleted it, but the screen flashed white, and then for a brief moment, the Uber interface reappeared. Just a quick blink long enough for me to catch a glimpse of something. A ride request. Pickup, unknown location. Rider, DI stared at the screen trying to make sense of what I'd seen. Then it was gone. My regular home screen returned like nothing had happened. I told myself it was a glitch. Maybe the app hadn't been fully removed. Maybe something was still running in the background. Later that night, I did what I shouldn't have. I reinstalled Uber, just to check. When the app loaded, I was met with a blank profile again. No photo, no name, just the single letter. I tried to log out, but the app wouldn't let me. The button was grayed out, completely unresponsive. I restarted the phone. Nothing changed, and then it buzzed. A notification. Why did you leave? No sender, no chat log, just the message, floating at the top of my screen for a few seconds before disappearing. I checked all my apps, my texts, even social media. Nothing. It hadn't come from any of them. It was like the message had just appeared from nowhere. I deleted the app again and shut off my phone. That night, I didn't sleep. Every sound felt amplified. The hum of the fridge, the ticking of the wall clock, the faint creaks of the building settling. I kept thinking I'd hear a knock at the door. When morning came, I went outside just to clear my head. The sun was warm, the streets busy again. It helped until I got back to my car. Something was tucked under my windshield wiper. At first I thought it was a flyer, maybe a parking warning, but when I pulled it off, my hands went cold. It was a plain piece of paper. 3 words written in dark red ink. You picked me. I looked around instinctively, but no one was nearby. Nothing out of the ordinary. People walking dogs, kids on bikes. But I felt something shift in that moment, a realization I couldn't shake. This wasn't random. This wasn't a rider I'd accepted. This was something I had invited, and whatever it was, it hadn't finished with me yet. I stopped driving altogether. No Uber, no food delivery, nothing. I told my friends I was taking a break, but the truth was I couldn't bring myself to sit behind the wheel again. Not after that note. Not after reading those 3 words you picked me in that smeared, almost blood-colored ink. I'd crumpled the paper and thrown it in the trash immediately. But it didn't matter. The message was already burned into my mind. For a few days, things seemed to settle. I stayed inside as much as possible, kept the curtains drawn, kept the lights on through the night. I barely slept, but I started to feel like maybe it was over. Maybe whatever I had encountered was just some strange anomaly, something I could move past if I just stayed put long enough. That illusion didn't last. On the 4th night, I heard something outside my window. It was soft at first, like the gentle crunch of gravel. My building had a small parking area in back, half covered in patchy grass and loose stones. I lived on the 2nd floor, overlooking that lot. I stepped up to the window cautiously, careful not to touch the blinds, just peered through the tiny space between them. There was nothing at first, but then the motion sensor light flicked on, and I saw a figure standing near the far corner of the lot, right where the light didn't fully reach. It wasn't moving, it wasn't walking toward anything, just standing there. Still, I couldn't make out the details from that distance, but the shape was familiar, tall, thin, wearing a hood that cast the face into shadow. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe. I just stood there for what felt like a full minute, heart hammering against my ribs, and then the light went off. It clicked into darkness, and the figure disappeared with it. I waited another 30 minutes before checking again. The lot was empty. I didn't sleep at all that night. The next morning, I went straight to the building manager. I asked if the security cameras had caught anything. He pulled up the footage from the night before, fast-forwarding through the motion-triggered events. There were a few clips of raccoons or car pulling in late, but nothing near my window, nothing around 3 a.m., which is when I'd seen it. When he tried to scrub back to that exact time, the screen turned to static. Just a snowy blur. He frowned and said, "That's weird. Could be a glitch." I nodded like I agreed, but deep down I knew it wasn't. That night, I locked every door and window, triple-checked them, and dragged a chair in front of the door. I kept my phone on silent, face down. I didn't want any more notifications. I didn't want to see another message, but something else happened. At 2:17 a.m., the elevator down the hall dinged. It was soft, but I heard it. I live on the 2nd floor. There's no reason anyone would be coming up at that hour. My building's mostly empty, and the units around me have been vacant for months. I sat on the edge of my bed, listening. Then came the sound of slow, deliberate footsteps. Not heavy, just controlled, like someone trying not to be noticed. They passed right by my door. Stopped for a moment. I held my breath. I didn't even blink. Then the footsteps continued down the hall. I didn't dare look through the peephole. I waited, motionless, until the sun started to rise. When I finally stepped into the hallway the next morning, there was nothing, no signs of anyone having been there. But when I got back to my door, something made me stop. There was a mark, small, almost invisible, drawn just above the peephole, a thin circle etched into the paint with something sharp, and inside it the same single letter D. That was when I realized this thing hadn't just followed me, it had found a way in. Not into my apartment, into my life. I haven't driven since. I haven't reopened the Uber app or anything connected to ride-sharing. I barely even leave my apartment now. Days blur together. I wake up feeling watched. I go to sleep the same way, if I sleep at all. Every sound outside my door jolts me upright. Every flicker of light from passing cars makes my heart stop. It's like I'm waiting for something, even though I don't know what. But whatever I invited into my life that night near the warehouse, it hasn't left. A few days ago, my brother invited me over. He lives across town, in a much newer building, far from where any of this started. I needed the distraction, just a day away from my apartment, from that hallway, from the constant hum of dread. We spent the afternoon watching old movies. I didn't tell him anything about what was happening. He wouldn't have believed me anyway. By nightfall, I decided to head home. I felt okay, lighter even. Like maybe I'd finally started putting some distance between myself and whatever had latched onto me. But when I got outside, my car was gone. I stood there in disbelief, keys still in my hand, staring at the empty space where I'd parked just a few hours earlier. I called the city towing service. No record of it being taken. No citations, no tickets. I reported it stolen and went back upstairs to tell my brother. He offered to drive me home, but I told him I'd borrow a rideshare to clear my head. I never did. I just took his spare keys and left quietly. When I got home, the first thing I noticed was how still everything was. The wind had died. No noise from the neighboring buildings. Even the street lamps seemed dimmer than usual, casting faint, distorted shadows. And then I saw it. My car was in the driveway, just sitting there like it had never moved. Same model, same color, same everything except it wasn't. I walked up slowly, cautiously, unsure if I was dreaming. The headlights flicked once, like a blink. The license plate was different. One single letter, D. I circled around it, heart pounding. The windows were fogged up, like someone had just been sitting inside, breathing slowly. I opened the driver's side door, against every instinct screaming inside me. The seat was pushed all the way back. The mirrors were adjusted outward, facing angles I'd never used. The interior smelled strange like rust, wet soil, and something else I couldn't quite place. Something metallic, something old. I reached for the glove compartment and stopped. There was a folded piece of paper resting on the passenger seat. I picked it up, my fingers shaking. It read, "You are now the rider." That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my apartment with every light on, staring at the car from my window. Nothing moved. No one came, but it didn't feel like it was over. The next morning I noticed something new. My phone, which had been powered off since the day I uninstalled everything, buzzed to life on its own. I picked it up reluctantly. There were no new messages, no missed calls. Just one notification across the screen. "Your driver has arrived." I froze. I checked the lock screen again. Nothing else. I went to settings. The Uber app wasn't installed. My phone wasn't even connected to the internet. That night I left the apartment and stayed with a friend. I didn't tell him why. I just needed to be anywhere else. But as I lay on his couch trying to close my eyes, I felt that same sensation I'd known too well by now. The feeling of being watched. I got up and walked to the window. Down on the street, under the flickering streetlight, was a black car, parked at an angle, engine idling. I couldn't see the driver. The windows were too dark. But I already knew. The car door opened slowly, but no one stepped out. It was waiting. I closed the curtain, backed away, and returned to the couch. But I know I can't run from it. It found me once. It always knows where I am because I accepted the ride, because I picked it. And now it's my turn to be taken somewhere. I just don't know where.